There was immense joy when a record goes to number one.
We knew every 5 days we had to churn out a hit.
It was only a matter of how do we make great pop music. Everything else was secondary to that.
As a team, magic.
It's always clever. It's always catchy. There was this smouldering genius taking place.
Over 100 top 40 hits in a period of 4 or 5 years. I mean, nobody does that.
It was classic pop. It was uncompromised. That's what the 80s were, you know. Stock Aitken Waterman defined it.
I always look for the magic. There's some magic operating in all hit songs.
It was fun. It was super exciting, but they were on a mission big time.
You were on the crest of a wave.
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
It's a lot to have one hit, but to have the whole of the top 10, I mean, that's just showing off, isn't it?
Most people treated pop music as trivial. It was more serious than life and death to us.
I knew the industry was out to screw us. Had to fight all along.
That it ended the way it did was tragic.
I stand accused of love in the first degree.
I probably had enough by that time, you know. Probably sick to death of each other.
I really do believe the three of them are geniuses. I think the records still sound as good today as they did 30, 35 years ago.
I'm just immensely proud that I'm part of that legacy. It was a pretty wild ride.
I don't see anybody else's viewpoint because I was driving a ship that was going in one direction successfully. My job was to be absolutely focused on delivering hits.
Pete was like the circus leader.
Pete's larger than life. Anything was possible.
Pete is the ideas man.
Pete is Pete. Pete Waterman is Pete Waterman, and he's a strong presence.
He walks into the room and he's taken over for a minute. Oh, I like that. I like that. Keep that. And he'd be gone again. You know?
He's calmed down and chilled out an awful lot, I think, over the years. But back then, he was like a box of fireworks.
He's got what we call a great ear for a pop song.
Matt and Mike, I only ever really saw them in the studio, just getting on with it and writing the songs.
Matt is the kind of groove merchant. He's the guy that brings the, you know, sometimes the kind of little Nile Rodgers guitar elements in. I mean, Matt would get on that guitar and you'd be like, as Jamaicans would say, oh, where you come from? You know?
Matt was more just kind of like the guy next door. Like he's like cool, laid back, but at the same time, you knew he was about business. And so it was easy working with him in the studio.
Mike was the melody.
Bit of a pop star in his own right, but quiet with it. I mean, I watched Mike disappear into a room for an hour and come back with a song.
He's a fantastic keyboard player. I love all the chords he uses.
I think I had a bit of a crush on Mike Stock, if I'm honest. Yeah, and I think he knew it, if I'm honest.
They all needed each other, basically.
So without either of them, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Without Pete, it wouldn't work. Without Mike, Matt, it wouldn't work.
We achieved a lot together. I don't think Mike and I, certainly in the early days, wouldn't have done it without Pete. Pete achieved a lot, but he wouldn't have done it without us. He couldn't possibly have done it without us.
They were more like artists than writer-producers.
The three of us grew up in an era where a single or an EP was affordable, but an LP was a real expensive thing. Singles was what we really understood, and so we did singles.
Welcome to the Hit Factory in London. This is where a host of stars come every week to make their records. And for the last 3 years, a record from this building has been in the top 40 every single week.
Everything they touched turned to gold.
Take or leave us, only please believe us. We ain't ever gonna be respectable. Like us, hate us, but you'll never change us. We ain't ever gonna be respectable. If you walk away,
literally every record they then produced, wrote, whatever, was a hit.
Never Gonna Give You Up. That record is the absolute turning point of everything in my life. I'm still unbelievably grateful for it. I think more so now than I ever was why it was being a hit, and even for a few years after. But America's the big one. That's the one that usually, for most British records, they go, no thanks.
With the current countdown to the #1 hit in the USA, this is Rick Astley live, Never Gonna Give You Up.
I know Rick Astley took America by storm, and that was Rick's personality and his vocal prowess.
You know that that record will be #1 for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. It will start to dive down in the charts. So in 8 weeks, you've got to be looking for a new single.
Whenever you need somebody, I'll bring my love to you. You don't have to say you love me. I just wanna be with you. I'll bring my love to you.
We, with Rick, absolutely kept that ball spot on. Bang, bang, bang.
So don't stop before then, it's destiny calling.
I used to remember some rhyme when we were kids. I went into the office and said, do you remember this when you used to say, together forever? And Sherry said, and never to part. I said, that was it.
Together forever and never to part. Together forever we two.
I think having Together Forever become #1 in America as well, after Never Gonna Give You Up, almost meant more to me, because it meant, okay, they might not be throwing me out the back door. It might not just be a one-hit wonder. We've had 2.
We ended up selling something like 12 million albums on the first album with Rick. Nobody in Britain was selling 12 million albums at that time. It was extraordinary.
You were beginning to feel they had that Midas touch, and almost anything they did had a chance of being a #1 or a top 5 record.
Suddenly that changed a lot of attitudes towards what the guys were doing. And it validated their songwriting and production abilities without a doubt with Rick Astley and then Kylie Minogue.
Wow, this is about to take off. I still have my day job, by the way. I was still, getting my scripts, learning my lines for Neighbours, driving to work. And those early days, it was, I guess I still had to pinch myself that this was really happening.
The interesting thing on I Should Be So Lucky is that it was #1 in 16 countries, and only 2 of those countries had run Neighbours. So it wasn't about the TV show, it was about Kylie Minogue's voice on that incredible song.
We're #1 for 5 weeks, and somebody says, what's the follow-up? And and then it's, Mike, you've got to go to Melbourne. So I went out to Australia, and I got another couple of songs recorded.
It was just hard work keeping up. Here's the song, here's the lyrics, do it. Quick, move on to the next one. And I really had to learn everything on the job, which is pretty much the story of my life.
I've got masses of respect for that woman. There's very, very, very few women who've managed to stick to the guns and have the careers over the length of time that they've had.
Kylie was the perfect vehicle for us. I suppose I've been waiting all my life for that to happen. I remember saying to Matt, God, this is going to be a real purple patch for us, because we can do any pop style we want with Kylie, because she's just the ideal, perfect person. She dances, she sings, she's lovely. That's all I've ever wanted in my whole life as a professional writer or musician. Give me somebody like that, you know.
I was just a kid figuring it out, and I had amazing people to propel me in that direction.
There's a real collaboration there. She was absolutely right for us, and we were absolutely right for her at that time.
Knowing what I know now about the music industry, that was a pretty amazing run.
Being a partner of Kylie's at the time and watching her blossom, you know, from the girl that I knew into this sort of international pop star, it made me sort of get off my arse a little bit, if I'm honest, when I saw what Kylie was doing. They sort of just asked me, would I be interested in a record deal?
When he arrived and came into my office for the first meeting, he had a ponytail and he had the manner of a rocker. Australia was kind of 10 years behind Britain at that point in the 80s in music. And they were very much into rock. That was their culture.
Jason, lovely lad. Fine tone, very fine tone in his voice. And we had a track we recorded with Rick that was going to be Rick's next number one. In fact, when we were working on it, we called it Rick's Next Number One, I think, before we'd even got a title.
And so there was this buzz of excitement that Rick was coming in to record Nothing Can Divide Us, which was written for him.
I really wish they'd written Never Gonna Give You Up Part 2. I really, really do, believe me. But they didn't.
I saw Rick, you know, coming down the stairs, ashen face, and just heading for the door.
It was just at the point when Rick was teetering on the edge, and he didn't like it and didn't want it to be finished.
So we had this number one hit sitting there with nobody singing it, and it was in Jason's key, and Jason sang it really well, and that was Nothing Can Divide Us, and that was the start of his career.
You must have heard some things about me that made you turn away, and made you have your doubts about me.
How do we bring Jason up to date? We introduced him to stylists. We had a great team of stylists as well. And gradually, once he had his haircut and the clothes were fantastic, and he became a pop star.
I always knew what clothes I wanted to wear and how I wanted to present myself. But when I cut my hair, things suddenly got really good and really exciting.
Scott, thank you. I've only got half an hour to fix the oil.
All you have to say is yes, and then you can get on with it.
We've heard that one before. Yes, what?
Yes, I will.
Yes, I will. What?
Marry me?
I was a bit dubious about recording with Jason Donovan on his own, let alone as a duet. I was thinking, two soap stars? I said, oh no, we're not doing a duet, not with Kylie, that would be too much.
We were dead set against the idea of doing a duet between the two of them. We thought it was naff.
The demand from the trade, the retailers and so on, particularly Woolworths, was enormous. Everybody was demanding this record.
It was just the right moment with the kind of mania of Neighbours, and Jason had started recording, and we'd both had our success.
Woolworths want to order 400,000 copies in advance. Oh, God. Oh, we've got to do it then.
That is Mike Stock and Matt and Pete at their best. That's where the teamwork, that's where the genius of those guys came into play.
I'd already been to Melbourne to work with Kylie after I Should Be So Lucky, and then I'd gone out to Melbourne to work with Jason to do his first album. My wife said, no, you're not going again. Tell one of the other two to go. So I recorded, especially for you, with one of my girl singers playing the Kylie part, and I played the Jason part. I recorded it, and Matt and Pete took the recording out to, I think they met them in Sydney to record it.
Especially for you, I want to tell you I was feeling that way too. And if dreams were wings, you know, I would have flown
And the record was designed not to be a Christmas song, because Pete always said, I want this record to be played on Boxing Day and on New Year's Day and into 1989.
Especially for you, I'm always overwhelmed. It's more than a hit song that people still love. It's beyond that.
It just avoids being too slushy. There's a lot of musical tension in the track itself, and a big part of that is the tempo, which is really achingly slow for a 4 on the floor beat, and it really shouldn't work, but it just clings on by its fingertips.
I'm thinking back to that Top of the Pops performance. I think we were quite nervous about it.
Dark eyes.
With gigantic grape cluster earrings or something.
Any idea that the Especially For You spin would be so iconic. It is quite sort of cheesy in a way, but it's sort of what the public wanted.
The kind of slow coming together, the lift, the swing, it's so naive, but it became a thing.
This connection between two people, and it was a connection as characters and as people, as we were at the time, you know, as partners. You know, are they or aren't they together? And it's sort of, it's a love story. You know, it's a love story.
We did go to #1 with that, but we didn't get the Christmas #1. It went to #1 in the January. We held off by Mistletoe and Wine.
Went on to sort of like 950,000.
I've forgiven Cliff for that since then.
When I performed that song, people's nostalgia neurons are just firing everywhere. It was about the moment and their childhood. Anytime they see Jason and I together, it's like, is this even happening?
And then when we did the show at the O2, I didn't realise they'd never sung the song together live.
Probably he and I thinking the same thing. God, we're still here, we're still doing this. I think Jason and I talked about it and we were going, we better not muck this up. You know, we weren't in our 20s anymore, so we thought, we hope this works. I can't guarantee we'll ever do it again.
I don't think being a pop star is a very natural thing for anybody, but some people manage to do it. Some people are born to do it, perhaps. I don't think I was, really.
And Rick had been out promoting all around the world on his own, other than with a tour manager. So we saw pretty quickly a worn-out artist.
He'd come from a band. If you're in a band and you've got that sort of a setup, you've got your mates with you and you're having a good laugh and you can wreck a few hotel rooms, it makes it all worthwhile. Rick on his own, I think, was a lonely business.
Rick didn't want it. So at the height of all of this, Rick just went, no, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. Because he wasn't comfortable.
I developed a fear of flying. I didn't want to go and promote records. I didn't want to do any of it, really. I was super lucky that I had a massive amount of success in a very short space of time. Somebody gave me a truckload of money for it, and I went, OK, I'm done.
Be careful of what you can dream of. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of anxiety. You know, my mates were in Australia surfing up and down the coast, and I was, you know, on a plane, you know, working my ass off.
We've written this song, Too Many Broken Hearts. He comes into England on February the 10th. We record it, we finish the record, we shoot a video, and the song is #1 on March the 10th.
At the time we were doing what we were doing, I think we were the only ones in the world doing what we were doing in the way we were doing it.
You know, that's how quickly we moved. But we could move as an independent company. Take a 1.5 years now if you try and do that.
Last night you talked about leaving. I said I can't let you go.
And I'll never forget when Pete heard the record, he went ka-ching.
I mean, Too Many Broken Hearts was amazing hit. I mean, that shocked us. I remember that week it went to #1. He was in, on the Wednesday night, he was in a series about Anzacs.
Yeah, I got my hair actually cut, not for the music. I got my hair cut for a television series called The Heroes.
And I said to him, do me a favour, Jace, tell me you die tonight. And he went, I do. I went, thank God for that. I said, we'll sell double the records on Saturday.
Too Many Broken Hearts sort of enabled me to create my own pop story. And it was the perfect song for the perfect time. I was looking different. I was looking like a pop star. I was becoming my own person. And I think Mike and Matt and Pete gave me the best song to define me at that time.
Too many broken hearts in the world. There's too many dreams can be broken in two. Too many broken hearts in the world. So I won't give up the fight for you.
He just took off. I mean, really, really ballistically took off.
I don't wanna say goodbye for the summer. Knowing the love in this, oh, let us make a pledge to meet in September and seal it with a kiss.
Kylie and Jason come out on our own in-house PWL label. I think you can't now think of yourself as a cottage industry.
Over the years, the more I went there, the more platinum and gold records there seemed to be on the walls.
At some point, we were 28% of the whole market.
Being part of that era, it's amazing.
There was a time when I thought, you know what, the eyes and the ears of the business are on us right now. They're waiting for our next move. They want to see what we're going to do next, and that's a great feeling.
It was a resentment from the industry that was coming back at us, where they were trying to keep us down. And it's hard to overemphasize how tough this was.
You don't remember me, but I remember you. 'Twas not so long ago. You broke my heart in two. Tears on my pillow, pain in my heart caused by you.
When you're talking about the 20,000 people employed by Sony or CBS, whoever they were at the time, or Warner's or EMI, and the American bosses normally were screaming down the phone, well, how come you letting these guys take your market share? There's thousands of you and there's 5 of them. What's going on?
I'm in LA at the California Hotel, and Bruce, who was Donna Summer's husband, comes over. He said, Pete, how are you? Can I bring Donna over to meet you? Straight away she said, could you write me a song? And I said, yeah, of course we can. You know,
Well, Donna Summer was just genius. Georgia Moroder was the sound for me for Donna Summer. I couldn't see how Stock Aitken and Waterman, what they would do with her sound.
I grew up with the Moroder stuff. Actually, that stuff was really influential on our early Hi-NRG stuff, you know, her 70s stuff.
We thought it was incredible that Donna was entertaining working with Stock Aitken and Waterman, and that was no disrespect to them, but, you know, it's a very kind of European English sound. Donna came from America.
What can we do with Donna? And we've got a few other songs ready to go, but I'm looking for something now that you can make a statement with. I go to bed thinking about it. I've got this idea in my head. I wake up, I go in the bath, and I'm getting, this time I know it's for real. I drive in the car to the studio. By that time, I've sort of worked it out.
There was a general hum went around the building and an atmosphere, you know, oh, Donna Summer's coming in today. And
the whole building stops. So here's a singer that whatever you write can perform it better than you even dream about.
Donna comes in. I always have to sing the tune to the singer, to the artist, because it's the first time they've ever heard it, and she sings it back to me. And she sings it back with embellishment. Part of the deal with Donna was that we were going to write with her.
You know, this time I know it's for real. It's an Americanism. We would never have used it.
Shout it out with a megaphone or a neon sign. Those were her bits.
She just absolutely leathered everything we gave her. She was absolutely fantastic. What a voice.
It's just a killer track. The fact that she'd worked with Stock Aitken and Waterman, for us, it was like, wow.
And by this time, we had the confidence not to put too much on tape. So there's an economy on that track. There's nothing that's, you know, there's no going on.
Donna Summer is different from any other act we ever did. So we would do a single, it would be a hit, we'd do a follow-up single, and then if that was a hit, we'd do an album. She was with Geffen Records in America. They didn't understand that concept at all. It wasn't an option for them. So we had to do this album. She had some real strong beliefs about not singing songs in the negative. I remember sitting her down, and because it did get difficult, and I had to explain that Shakespeare wrote about death, but he didn't actually die to do it. Made a few changes to a couple of things, but she was absolutely delighted. She just went, this is exactly what I want.
Do you get that with the best singers? I got it with Cliff, I got it with Paul McCartney. It was a great experience.
Got home one night from a club, and I put the telly on, and they were talking about politics at 2 a.m. I thought, I've just come in, I've had a few beers, the last thing I want to hear about, bloody politics on the telly. So about 3 weeks later, I'm with David Lidman, who was controller at Granada. And I said, Christ, your station is rubbish at 1 o'clock in the morning. He said, well, what's your answer then? Well, why don't they come in from the club and we start another club? Go on. Well, we put a club on live.
This is the Hitman.
And this is her.
And this is Shelley's Lazy Diamond Stone.
Yes.
Let's start for all the usual sort of competitions, and also we've got some champion spinners in. They're probably an awful lot better than
Terrible, bloody awful programme. Awful idea.
People remember me more for the Hitman and Her than they do for anything else. I knew that the Hitman and Her was important to Stock Aitken Waterman because it kept us in that nighttime club audience when the club scene was changing dramatically. And the only way to stay in that was to have a brand that stayed there alongside it all. The Hitman and Her created so much grief within the partnership.
I think it was on twin trajectories, yeah. Possibly. Definitely. I mean, maybe we all were to a certain extent, but Mike and I didn't go and do a bloody radio show or a TV show because we were knackered by the end of the week.
I did the pilot for that.
As one of the Hitman's artists, whenever we released a song, we'd be invited to perform at one of the Hitman venues or locations.
I think I did it 3 times. And, yeah, it was just bonkers, wasn't it?
Before you go, just get a quick round in.
Get a quick round in. No, I'm going to go and sing a few songs now, Pete.
Who's leaving who?
Everyone.
Hazel Dean, ladies and gentlemen!
We did Who's Leaving Who in 1988. And that sort of turned it all over again. Massive. It was a great song.
I'm just trying, 'cause I don't even know who's leaving who. Is it me? Is it me? Is it you?
There was something about Stock Aitken Waterman. You wanted to be a part of their gang, you know. They were creating magic, you know, that was reverberating around the world.
You'd hear records and you'd go, they've nicked that off us. So it proved you were having a reach.
They were creating this little slice of 3.5 minutes that made everyone feel fucking great, you know.
If we had Jason Donovan on a road show, I mean, we would triple up on security. It was just pandemonia.
These were things that had never happened since the Beatles, in truth. And everywhere that they went, it was just mayhem.
Now, onto the stage. You've waited long enough. Jason Donovan! Thank you. Welcome. Wow. There is a few people here today, isn't it?
I didn't feel sexualized in any way, shape, or form. I was very much in control of my image, always have been. It's the one thing I knew a lot about.
There was these 2 girls called Donna and Anne-Marie who were like the Jason fans, and they literally had pen all over, like Jason written that many times all over their face. And they got backstage, and they both had bottles with Jason's name on it. And they sat down, they couldn't speak, they were crying, and they both had these empty bottles. And he was like, "What are these bottles for?" And they were like, "Could you breathe into the bottles?"
The Jason bottle breathing.
So Jason undoes the top and he breathes into the bottle and quickly put the top back on so they could keep his breath.
That's when it got sort of silly.
It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. And you realise at this point what you had achieved in the eyes of the public.
I wrote a letter to Pete saying I wanted to be a record producer. Surprisingly, he wrote back to me.
I am like a big sponge. I soak up information. And so when I got any letters, I responded on the grounds that one of them might know something I don't know. And I was DJ at the time of Saturday mornings on Radio City in Liverpool.
Of course, I went down to meet Pete as soon as he started the show. He would stand outside the radio stations, he would talk to the kids, he would ask them what they wanted.
Tony Wilson once said, "I had the best A&R department in playgrounds in the world." And he's right, because kids knew everything we were doing.
Every Saturday, we would go to the radio station. We would wait for Pete to arrive. He'd drive up in his big red GTO. And there was always a girl outside, big long red hair. And she would pass him a tape every week.
Pete, listen, it's me. I'm Sonia Evans. Please, you've got to listen to my voice.
Eventually, he did listen to the tape.
He said, "I tell you what then, kid. come next Saturday on my radio show and let's see what you got.
Sonia performed live, and I think that was him testing to see what the audience reaction would be.
And then the switchboards were going like crazy. Who's that girl? And he said, "You're in luck, kid. Would you like to sign with us?" And I was like, wow.
We were in our peak period of just being able to write to order.
My big song came from talking to Mike and Matt, and it must have took probably about 40 minutes.
And her voice was great, and she got to him, but she was rushing ahead all the time. And that was just, I think, adrenaline and enjoyment and enthusiasm. And I was trying to get her to hold back, Sonny, hold back.
The next thing I knew, you know, I'm on Top of the Pops, #1. Female artist to have 5 top 20 singers from one album. I was absolutely chuffed with that. It was just hit after hit, really, just one after the other. Being 18 years old, oh wow, singing those brilliant songs, meeting the people that I met, all the places I went to. Just listen to your heart, that's what they say. Listen to your heart, you'll be okay. Listen to your heart. Listen to your heart. I thank Pete from the bottom of my heart.
I was like a 30-year-old guy making records for kids of 15 to 17. I can't possibly be in tune with what they are. But by listening to them and working with them, that's how you pick it up.
Pete said, you know, come down and visit us in the studio in London, probably, you know, just being nice. We just arrived one day and he was kind of like, what are you doing here? And like, you know, these 3 kids from Liverpool. And it was at the time when Kylie was there recording her 2nd album and Jason was recording his 1st album. Of course, they were an item. The much rumoured Kylie and Jason stories, you'd see them kissing in the reception. It was a bit like... So she was the biggest pop star in the UK at this time. We were kids, and she was just sitting in reception with us, hanging around, I guess, waiting to be called back into the studio. And we'd sit and chat with her.
I guess you couldn't get your fix of your pop stars or celebrities on social media and that kind of thing then. They would trek to the vineyard and hope to glimpse someone.
We did Stock Aitken Waterman tours where we would have tour buses that would take us around the country, and we'd do afternoon discos to kids when they got out of school.
As successful as they got, they still used to go to this little cafe around the corner. They would go to the pub every night, even though at that point they were, without question, the most important people in the music business in the world.
I guess you could say that I'm a fool to want you so badly, but I'll never give up hoping till I make you mine.
It was just an incredible time. Lots of money coming in. And it became more hated. I mean, I think at one point, Stock Aitken Waterman had 7 or 8 records in the top 10 in 1 week.
Quite a lot of people have talked to me about Big Fun, and they've been quite sneering about it.
The minute I met you, I couldn't forget you. I knew I was falling in love. Ever since then, to see you again was...
Pop is supposed to be fun. Some people think Big Fun was a bit fun too far.
If I look back now and I look at the Big Fun period, I probably would not have done Big Fun, okay? Because it looked like we were taking a mickey. It looked like we could take 3 kids from the park and just turn them into hits. Now, as it happens, they were probably the most popular out of all the acts we had on the roadshow, other obviously than Kylie and Jason and Sonia. Big Fun went down better than anybody.
In a way, Stock Aitken and Waterman really started what became the boy bands and X Factor. is you can actually take a front person and put a formula behind that person and have commercial success. Sometimes it lasts, sometimes it's very ephemeral.
Yeah, we did make some stinkers. There's no question about that. And some of them listen back and you think, oh God, what were we thinking of? Or we weren't really giving it full knobs and whistles on that one, were we? That was a bad week.
What happened to the radio? They never play the songs we know.
Some tracks, you hear them and they just blow you away, you know.
I was such a fool to think that you would ever change your ways.
We made a terrific album with some of the best songs we've ever written with Lonnie Gordon. But Lonnie was probably a little mature to be a pop star. Doesn't mean they make great records.
She's got a strong voice, and the song just caught another bit of magic. Very early 90s. It's not throwing an idea that's too crazy here, but the world changed. Attitudes changed.
I think with Kylie, she developed amazingly as an artist.
I wanted to get more involved. I wanted to do more than turn up diligently, do the song, deliver the song. Pete said, all right, kid, what do you like? What are you listening to? By this stage, starting to get into club culture in London and all of that, and getting a bit older and, having a bit of a rebellious late teens moment.
She was saying all along she wanted to do something a little less teenagey, more grown up. So we were up for that.
Yeah, music had changed a bit. Club music had become very, very big. She kind of wanted to move on.
And I think it's an amazing illustration of how Stock Aitken Waterman could really tap into the zeitgeist of what was happening and spin that to work for them.
You watched Kylie evolved into, Better the Devil You Know and Step Back in Time, and you could see her maturity and her, sexuality and change in her artistic expression move along with that.
Right at that time, the hottest writing team there was, and we were right in that vein of just writing Kylie hits as if they were easy to write.
So we went back to a more clubbier base, and we went a little bit away from pop dance, a bit more back towards dance pop. And actually, on that album, there were quite a few sort of techniques that we used that we hadn't used for a bit, and it was nice to rediscover those.
By the time Rhythm of Love came and we had those 4 songs that were just like such a solid collection, I guess we had worked together long enough to nail it at that stage.
When I listen to them now, I think that's good. That's got something about it, and there's a magic going on there.
That whole album is just brilliant. It's brilliant.
Even when I didn't have the time constraint of getting from Australia to London, having to work and get back and go straight to work at the other end, they still worked at an incredible pace. I did 4 albums in 4 years and then a greatest hits, so we didn't waste any time.
So when Kylie decided to leave home, because we were like her dads, she left home.
We never really replaced her, or Jason really, with people who had enough wind in their sails. They had a forward thrust before we even worked with them.
I love the Kylie records, and I loved. We're still great friends to this day. It was just Kylie became too big. I know that sounds crazy because of all the money we earned, but when an artist becomes so dominant, then you have to take the money. You can't be creative. You got three lads that took on the world and made a fortune. There wasn't any lawyers involved. There wasn't any managers involved. Then people get involved and it's always, well, why has he got this and why has he got that?
If you go from 85 to 91, that's it. You know, in terms of the big stuff.
We ran out of space, so we did the only thing that was possible really was to buy a building next door and move the administration staff into that.
I went across to what had been the accounts office, which used to have 3 people in it. And I walked through the door and there were about, 20, 30 desks in there. And I thought, who the hell are all these people? This is not us. This has become something else.
We were just a recording studio and they were the office, and whenever I'd go over there, it was like walking into a firm of accountants. So that destroyed whatever alchemy was going on. That was ripped apart at that point. I screamed and shouted at Pete and told him what that was happening. I don't know.
When we were just doing it as a job of work and going in and doing what we did best, it was brilliant. It was, if you made £1 million, you made £1 million. If you lost £1 million, you lost £1 million. That was, the way it was. It wasn't until later that everybody got accountants that started to plan it all out that, to me, ruined it all.
Pete's desire to get back into the clubs was overriding a lot of things.
Pete's focus was elsewhere, I think.
Started an offshoot label called PWL Continental with the idea of signing more club records that weren't necessarily made at the studio. And this was a real bone of contention between Stock and Aitken and Waterman.
We didn't make the records. They weren't Stock Aitken Waterman records. These were made by the Belgians and the Dutch.
We were fighting our own company here. We had a label and we had a team, and we felt if we put our efforts into making a decent record, it gets released and gets promoted and we have a hit. Towards the end of 1990, that wasn't happening anymore.
Tracks that we were finishing were being remixed by lots of other people, and versions were being released that were not really what we'd intended.
And then the standard of the music drops.
Commercially and business-wise, it was a good move, and especially, massive hits with To Unlimited, but it had nothing to do with the studio team.
My thought at the time was that we should take a break for a few months and just do something different. And then we should have been in a position where we could be selective about what we do.
But I think there was a requirement to keep the wheels turning, keep the productivity going, because there were, I hate to say it, there were mouths to feed. There were other people that relied on us to do that.
I got 60 staff that we paying every month. I was running a business. That business was eating money.
The fun that I had was on keeping going, not standing back and patting myself on the back. I never did that. I just kept going. But that was my drive, and that was that was what I loved. That was it, working. It was its own reward.
But Mike and Matt had that relationship between themselves. Had that relationship well before I ever met them. It could get testy at times, and only Mike could handle that. I mean, him and Matt would fight, and I mean fight.
The nearest we ever came to blows was we were both walking up to the bank for some reason, I don't know why, and we fallen out about something, and he pushed me, and I pushed him, and we both looked at each other and thought, no, let's not go there.
What happened really in Matt decided he'd had enough.
I had a fallout with Mike, which was very unusual. He was being a complete arse, and he'd been being a complete arse for 2 or 3 hours, and I thought, well, I'm not standing around doing this. So I just got my tackle and I drove home, and I thought, what are you doing here? What are you doing? And I remember I got to Highgate where I lived, and I went to the Prince of Wales and had a pint of beer. It was the middle of the afternoon, and this word came into my head, which was disaffected.
I knew that Matt and Mike had had some sort of falling out, and I never saw Matt again.
I expected the phone to ring at some point, but it didn't ring for 2 or 3 days, and I thought, well, fine, if that's the way you feel, fine, screw you.
When we were fighting together as a team, we had common enemies. We then started to fight against ourselves.
I probably had enough by that time, you know. Probably sick to death of each other. You know?
And that was a shock to the company. And say, we had a lot of employees at that time. We were a machine that was built to handle this kind of product.
As far as I was concerned, Matt had decided to go motor racing.
And I just had my daughter, and I had a family, and I had my motor racing, I had a few bob.
Matt decides to leave. I decided to carry on for a while.
We soldiered on. We had hits. You know, we were still going.
Without us making music, I was saying to myself, everyone's out of a job. But that was what I stayed for. I stayed to keep it going for the others. David Howells came to me and said, Mike, look, if it was possible, we should get another album recorded with Kylie. So I telephoned Kylie and she agreed, you know, that she would record another album, we'd co-write it. And, you know, we had quite a few hits from that. Following that, everything dried up. There was nothing else to do. Kylie had finally left and I found myself on my own fighting everybody.
It wasn't the same, you know, because Matt, in hindsight, added to Mike something that all the rest of the musicians we brought in just couldn't replicate.
Mike's really easygoing. Mike probably is the least high strung of the bunch. You know, I love Pete, but Pete is Pete. Pete Waterman is Pete Waterman, and he's a strong presence. But Mike was fun.
Lovely person, Sybil. First of all, I did a cover of The Love I Lost.
The beginning of The Love I Lost. One of the things I think what might have happened is that I was probably just singing it before the track came on, and the decision was made based on some of just me singing. I can remember planning, building my whole world around you, and I can remember hoping. It just made sense. And I can remember hoping that you and I could make it on through, but something went wrong. We loved each other, we just couldn't get along. Take a good look at me. I'm in misery, can't you see? The love I lost was a sweet love. It was a sweet love.
As soon as we put it in the clubs, it was like instant. Probably the fastest hit we ever had in that respect. Because everybody knew Sybil. So all the radio stations like Kiss had all been supporting Sybil, but they'd never had the big hit.
I was just actually trying to get into my groove, and I think that that's how the idea was captured. I'm sorry to say, you go your way and I'll go my way. It hurts deep inside the day we say goodbye, but the love I lost was a sweet love. It was a sweet love.
I think she was probably in the studio for about 4.5 minutes, which is the length of the single. I just, you know, that was a great thing with Sybil, you know. Singers like that just come in and do the job.
I could sing a pop record, but I could sing an R&B soul record, and I could sing a soul-y dance record. Those elements made me a little bit different and set me apart.
And in the last year I was working with Pete, I did as much recording, wrote as many songs, but I think I only had 3 records out. We had some hits, but they were on outside labels. And all of the focus of the company was moving into this, bring records from here, bring records from there. What's the point of having a writer? What's the point of having a producer? What's the point of having a studio if you do that?
Mike Stock decided he'd had enough and made the move by leaving.
I had a real breakup with Pete. I really let fly because something as brilliant as what we had was being destroyed from the inside, slowly taken apart.
I just sat back and just said, I'll wait. I'll let it all settle down and wait for it to come back to me, which of course it always does if you just sit there and don't panic.
Went round the corner, bought a building, built a studio and got going again.
He rang me up one day, he said, "Do you fancy making some records?" I said, "All right, yeah, I'm not doing much."
We released Nicky French in the UK. Have a hit over here.
Nicky French, Total Eclipse of the Heart, got to #2 in the States. Capped off by Michael Bloody Jackson.
There's nothing I can do, a total eclipse of the heart.
We hooked up with Simon Cowell.
So Simon said, "Mike, from now on, I'm only going to make #1 records with you."
Post Stock Aitken Waterman, I had 2 actors signed called Robson and Jerome. They sung this song on a TV show. Mike, fortunately, saw what I saw, which was if we got these 2 guys to actually record this song, and trust me, took a lot of calls to persuade them. We got them in the studio, and Mike, thank God, made that record Unchained Melody for me, and it just went crazy.
And so Matt and me, we do Unchained Melody and then 3 or 4 other singles for that project, and they're massive.
Well, that's how I started to sell millions and millions of records, because I worked out the power of television.
Simon was, and still is, to me, the greatest dynamo I've ever seen in my life. I mean, Simon is focused, and when he's focused, he can walk through a wall.
I mean, what Pete did with Steps was absolutely remarkable, and he clearly took everything that he'd learnt during his Stock Aitken and Waterman days, because Steps, when they started off, they were a line dance group. Where can they go from here? That's it.
I met Tim and Vicky, and they were the managers. Tim and Vicky had styled it on like mixed spice, so it was like a equivalent to Spice Girls. I walked out and just said, no, it's ABBA on speed.
He totally transformed them into another pop phenomenon.
And I knew exactly where to take them. And I knew that if I was absolutely ruthless and guided where I wanted it to go, it would work package-wise, clothes-wise, video-wise, presentation-wise. They got it brilliant. It worked perfectly. Then, of course, everybody starts adding to it because it's so big. I mean, they were so huge. They go over and they work for Disney, and Disney want them to do this and that, and I'm no longer in charge. And, I go, well, you know what? I've been here before. Don't get upset about it, move on.
Apart, it doesn't work. Together, it's magic.
Stock
Aitken
Waterman. Oh, it's so different right here now. It's posh now. Got windows in it. Didn't have windows in it when we were here.
Who'd have thought 30 years ago we'd be here making a documentary? People do come here.
Do they?
Yeah, fans.
To do what?
To get snaps.
Should we get a blue plaque?
We've tried.
Nobody's interested.
The main studio is here, on the first floor.
That can't be the control room, though, can it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was, Mike.
And that is where the tape machines were.
And this was our office here.
That was Pete's office
was
behind
my office.
that one there, yeah.
So that's where I had my train set.
Nothing can divide us. Nothing can divide us.
It's never just one part, it's the sum of three that made Stock Aitken Waterman the success they were.
Well, I think they'll be forever known for having a volume, a body of work.
The Motown team of the 80s.
They wrote great pop songs.
Responsible for the biggest pop hits of the second half of the 80s.
They were great songwriters.
All the hits they achieved, all the wonderful artists that they found, and they really touched people.
They were true to who they were, and they allowed me to be true to who I was.
It was a beautiful vibe because they allowed you to be, and so therefore they got the best.
I think they're some of the greatest songwriters the world, and without a shadow of a doubt, Britain have ever produced.
Legendary. I'd say that they have earned their place in music history.
The public, the people that matter, they're the ones that bought them. They've always felt that. But I think in terms of the critics, they're finally, 30 years later, starting to look at those records and give them the respect that they deserve.
Well, cheers. Cheers. After 30 years.
Or so.
As a musician, I'd started with pop and gone through heavy rock and jazz rock and all of these things and ended up back where I started doing pop with these two.
What we did was new. Everything you see today is because of Stock Aitken Waterman. You know, we were just the three of us. And we had, at one time, probably 2 staff.
I'm only now realising what kind of an effect it had, really. They do sound good. They absolutely do sound good. But I love the fact that people still like it.
I definitely spent a number of years in a little personal wrestle with I Should Be So Lucky. I did try and run away from it for a while. And then at a certain point in time, I realised you can run, but you can't hide. It kind of came full circle and it became cool to do it again. And now I love singing those songs. Might have gone through a stage where it was really uncool, but I think now it's eternally cool.
Each other for so long. Your heart's been aching. You're too shy to say it. It's time we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it.
I sang with her at Hyde Park, and it's just a fun place to be.
Tell me what you like to see. I'm never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down.
Even though we didn't all go on tours together on a bus, we are kind of connected. And the fact that Jason turns up, because believe me, he turned up on his bike. He just turned up with just like, you know, well, come on then.
Stock Aitken Waterman, they were doing it to satisfy people who just loved music. And I think that's the ultimate accolade. And I'm lucky and grateful to have been part of their time. And, yeah, lucky me.
And obviously she's a grown woman, he's a grown man. But for that moment, they're back again. And so the whole audience, 100,000, they're all back with them. And I think it's great. It's really great. And it's nothing to sort of put down in any way. It should be elevated.
There is one thing I'd like to add to all three of you. Thank you.
I think they should do it one more time. I'm in.
How would you sum up musically what you did?
FLM. Fucking lovely, mate.
And if you missed part one of Stock Aitken and Waterman, watch now on My 5. As a father tries to keep his family together, the twists of our brand new original drama, The Catch, continue Wednesday night at 9. Next, Stock Aitken and Waterman's greatest hits. Find a brick wall, a long jacket, and sway those forearms like Rick Astley in just a moment.
3 cheers for Stock Aitken and Waterman. The end.